Good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, November 18th, 2019, and this is a regular Moscow City Council meeting. If you would all stand with me, we will do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first thing of order that we have tonight, we have a proclamation for Food Drive Day, which I will read. Whereas Palouse Cares is a nonprofit organization with a mission to reduce food insecurity on the Palouse, and whereas food insecurity is a significant problem in Latah County, seeing an increase in childhood hunger from last year. Whereas the Moscow School District reported on average more than 26% of Moscow students are eligible for free or reduced priced federal funded meal benefits. And whereas state and federal programs that previously helped fill some of the voids have seen a decline in program budgets and staffing, placing more pressure on local community members to find solutions. And whereas, in response to such unsettling circumstances, Palouse Cares holds an annual food drive in the hopes of inspiring a national event to continue to fight childhood hunger. And whereas, in 2018, Palouse Cares helped 8 communities in Latah County with food, toiletries, and financial support, including donating 30,000 pounds to the City of Moscow food banks in outlying Latah communities. Now therefore, I, Bill Lambert, the mayor of the City of Moscow, do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 7th, 2019, as Food Drive Day in the City of Moscow, and I urge residents to set non-perishable food items on their porches or by their front doors for pickup by volunteers on that day to help combat childhood hunger in our community and eventually around the world. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Rick Menard, Don Fry, Beth Walker, Brent Loney, and Tamara Hull with us to receive this proclamation. And others, whoever, come on up. Don't be bashful, you guys. We're missing one person. Yes, we are. But we're going to get a picture of this. Here we go. Let me get right in the middle.
Alright, 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile.
Okay, so ready for John. You guys can talk.
Okay.
Or you can speak if you wish, or- Come right up here with the podium, Rick.
Oh, boy.
That way we'll get your ear.
I left my speech.
Okay,
but,
send from your heart.
in 2006, I had no idea that Palouse Cares would be doing what they're doing today. We raised maybe 3,000 pounds of food back then, and now we're up to 30, 40, sometimes more than that food. And the pressure is really on us to take care of the food banks. You know, in Moscow, Idaho, there's one food bank in Moscow, Idaho right now. The other one closed down a couple years ago. There's 2 or 3 on campus. The pressure is on us to do what we do. We feel challenged. We feel scared every Saturday morning when there's not a soul that shows up until the big crowd shows up around 8:30, 8:45. We just have passion. We don't judge people. You know, a lot of people will say, well, tell them to get a job. Well, life's not like that. You know, tell that 6-year-old kid that his dad doesn't have a job. Tell him that he shouldn't have food. And that just breaks my heart, and we're extremely compassionate about that 6-year-old or that teenager who's too embarrassed to go to the food bank or get a reduced lunch at the school. So I invite all of you guys to the auction, which starts at 11 o'clock, which is a fundraiser. We have we probably have over 100 items at the auction. We usually get vehicles from local dealers. Just amazing items that you can do some Christmas shopping and maybe spend a little bit more than retail is, you know, to help the cause. So I appreciate this. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, It means a lot to us. Bill, I've known you forever, and you know the Safeway connection. You guys have always been helpful, and unfortunately, you're going to see us next year because poverty's not going away. So thank you for your time, and I hope to see you guys Saturday, December 7th.
You're welcome. Don, you want to say a few words as well?
Not really anything other than just to say that our ultimate goal amongst all of us that are involved with Palouse Cares is to feed all the kids in town and in Latah and Whitman County. I mean, it is, for us here, it's Latah County. But for Palouse Cares, it's Whitman and Latah County and trying to help the need and making sure kids don't go hungry.
Well, food insecurity is a big issue for all of us in every one of our communities. And this weekend, my mayor's Youth Advisory Council, I'm going to be doing a report later on in this council meeting at the end of it. We were out at Safeway and we did a number of things for raising things, turkeys and food, as well as cash for this food bank. And I'm going to do a report at the end of the evening. I'm real proud of those kids from a mayor's Youth Advisory Council that put it together on Saturday and Sunday down at Safeway. It was wonderful. And Eric down there was terrific for us to work with too. So that the thing of it is, you guys always remember this, you're not the only ones out there fighting the good fight on this. There's lots of people out there doing this as well to help. And so it takes an army of people to do it, not just a few. So we're all part of it. We're all part of that army. So thank you very much for what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, with that, I will move on to the consent agenda.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Jim and a second by Gina to approve the consent agenda as is. I'll start the roll with Catherine.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will move on to the next item. Staff recognition. Gary, what do we have this evening?
Okay, I think Chief Nickerson has a presentation tonight.
Okay, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to take a minute. I know everybody probably already knows, and she's probably about the most humble person there is, because I'm sure she's right over there to my right, blushing right now. Is I want to recognize Debbie Carscallon. Just the work that she does in our organization. She was recognized nationally for National Paramedic of the Year. She's been in the organization for 15 years. And I can still remember 5.5 years ago, several of the questions she asked me and put me on the spot in the middle of a ballroom before I got hired. And one of them was challenging me to, if I got hired here, is to be accountable and hold people accountable and all those type of things. And that just stuck with me ever since I've been here and ever since that day in July of 2014. And she is the epitome of hard work, dedication, and going above and beyond for anything that we do as an organization. And the city needs to be proud. The organization needs to be proud. I'm proud of her and all the work that she does for us and our community. So why don't you go ahead and come on up and bring your award up here, if you would, please. This is the award she got given to her in New Orleans back about a month ago. So feel free to say something.
Well, thanks a lot, Chief. You know, talk about putting the pressure on.
She's humble.
Well,
She's humble.
Debbie has consistently been an integral part of what she has done for years and years. And the thing of it is, we have a lot of people in our city, whether it be on the fire department or whether it's employees or whatever, and they just do what it takes to do, and they do it every single day. They do it faithfully, and they go above and beyond, and that's Debbie Carscallon. And I've known this woman for many, many years, as well as her significant other for many, many years, and they both are the epitome that they do that day in and day out without question, Chief. And so with that, it is a big deal. So what does the plaque say, Chief? Why don't you read it for Debbie? Come on. Be a sport and tell us what it says.
Now you're asking for a lot. It says, NAEMT NASCO Paramedic of the Year presented to Debbie Carscallon by the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians for exemplifying outstanding professionalism and service as a paramedic, October 15th, 2019.
Thank you so much, Debbie. You're free to say something if you wish.
I promised her this would not come up again.
Now get Dan up there. Get Dan up there and get a picture of Dan with his bride. Come on, get up there, Dan.
Oh, man.
No. Very good.
Well, you look as good as you're gonna look, buddy. So just
All right, let's do 1, 2, 3.
Okay, very good. Thank you both very much. Well, like I said, you know, our firefighters, our emergency workers, our EMTs, these folks did, and our volunteers all the way down the food chain. They just do it day in and day out, 365 days a year, religiously. And so, thank you very much for what you do, Debbie, and you're very deserving of that. With that, I'll move on to item number 3. Or Gary, did you have anything else?
No, sir, that's it.
Mayor's appointments, and I do have one appointment this evening. And it is Mark Beauchamp, the Urban Renewal Agency, expiration 12/31 of 2021. And I would entertain a motion from the council on this.
I move approval.
Second.
I give it to Jim. Art made the motion, Jim made the second to approve Mark for Urban Renewal Agency. I'll start the roll, Tan.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And Mark is with us here tonight. Mark, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself? He didn't know I was going to ask him to do this. He probably wouldn't have came. But Mark, this guy I've known for quite a while. So Mark, just tell us a little bit. How long you've lived here and
Spent more than half my life here in Moscow. Came from the Central Valley of California. Gosh, I've met or known most everybody in Moscow, mostly from working at Safeway for Bill. So you meet everybody. Years will go by, and they'll still go, "Oh yeah, how's Safeway?" Well, I'm sure it's doing good. Let's see. Married, Kristen. 4 kids. We own a textbook business in off in the hinterlands next to City North American Moving, and proud to be a Moscow business owner and want to be here, want to grow up here, want to raise my kids here. So, yeah.
Now, I want to tell you something about Mark. I was out on the baseball field here a number of months ago because he has a son that's playing Babe Ruth.
That's right.
And so, and I've mentioned this to Mark several times, I said, you'd be a perfect guy on a commission here in the city of Moscow. And so, and over the years, I've talked to him about this. And so he gave me a call here a while back and said, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to serve. And that's what we need for volunteers in the city of Moscow. And so Mark's an example of that. And I just want to bring up front. So thanks, Mark, for being a part of it.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Appreciate it, guys.
Okay, item number 4, public comment, mayor's response period, where we allow 15 minutes for folks to talk. We give people 3 minutes apiece, as long as it's not on this evening's agenda and/or in front of Planning and Zoning or the Board of Adjustment. Please state your name and let us know what is on your mind.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. So I want to call attention to what I think is a vote of confidence to the council that was received during the recent elections. I attended several forums, and most of the questions were focused on key initiatives that you've been working on, while any single candidate is being considered. Simultaneously, the council's actions are under scrutiny. The candidates that were most well-informed and aligned with those areas that the council has been working on were elected. So clearly, the majority of the voting population is relatively satisfied or encouraged by what you've been doing. So I call that a vote of confidence.
Thank you, Catherine, or Victoria. Sorry. Others would like to come up and speak? Okay, well, we're going to move on to item number 5, Moscow Chamber of Commerce Annual Report. We have Jenny Ford here. Jenny, is Michael Bryan with you as well, or are you soloing this? Okay, it's all Jenny. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Seth. Thank you. Sign on. Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lambert, City Council members, city staff, audience members, as well as folks on the City of Moscow YouTube channel joining us tonight. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present. My name is Jenny Ford. I serve as the Executive Director of the Moscow Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Center, and I reside at 1024 Grandford Drive, Moscow. The mission of the Moscow Chamber of Commerce is stated here on this first slide initially, as well as a lovely headshot of yours truly. But the mission, I just think, is really important for the audience as well as City Council to keep in mind in regard to the efforts that we're putting forward. The Moscow Chamber of Commerce mission is to strengthen, promote, and lead the business and economic community and support the free enterprise by preserving and enhancing the quality of life. The initiatives that are put forth through the Moscow Chamber of Commerce are not of my own. I serve at the pleasure of the Board of Directors. You can see a list of the Board of Directors as well as their associations listed here. And there are also ex officio members that are not listed up here, including the Partnership for Economic Prosperity, Latah County, and the University of Idaho President's Office. The following slides that I'll be going over in regard to the work that the Chamber has been doing could not be completed without the support of my incredible staff. So you'll see pictured here Stephanie Allen, Member Services and Programs Coordinator, Saffron Brooks, Erin Dutton, as well as Laura Richmond, that all have very dynamic and unique characteristics that they bring to the Chamber of Commerce. And I do have to provide a specific shout out to Miss Kendra, who is not pictured here, for helping me put together this presentation amongst many, many other things, who's in the audience tonight. We participate in a lot of different activities and help elevate a lot of different activities throughout the entire year. We have monthly after hours and luncheons, as well as community events that we partner with this great city as well, grand openings and ribbon cuttings. Just some examples of what we've done in the last year are after hours with Appaloosa Horse Museum, Wild at Art, Terra Lou, Interiors, as well as Camiat Coffee and Cafe Artista. We do provide platforms annually for monthly luncheons with different themes, but the ones specifically associated to our city are law and public safety, which take place every January, our State of the City that typically takes place in February or March, and then also candidate forums and legislative recaps. You'll see here some photographs just for you to note some of the things that we have been involved in. We are a part of multiple different tablings throughout the year, including new faculty and staff orientation with the University of Idaho, new student orientation for New St. Andrews. We table at Palooza Fest as well as the Latah County Fair. We organize the downtown trick or treat and partner with the Vandaltown Block Party as well as the Winter Carnival with the city and the University of Idaho. Grand openings from this last year include Tri-State Memorial Hospital as well as Model Home Furnishings. Our government affairs arm, our government affairs committee, is a very busy committee. There's a handful of committees under the Moscow Chamber of Commerce umbrella, and I won't be going through those today, but I would like to point out some specific things that we do amongst this committee. We have city representatives on this committee, including Gary Riedner, and we're going to be providing you the results from our legislative survey. That is something that our committee requested that we provide all of you, are those results in a tangible document that's easier to read. It won't just be in a survey mechanism. We are putting together and creating a nice tangible document, not only for our legislators, but for you as well, that will include the priorities from the survey, as well as elevate our actual District 5 legislators as well. So we can give them acknowledgement for what they do for us. We are continuing our popular coffee with our District 5 legislators. We started that last spring, and we're participating in 5 Saturdays this year. The first one is January 28th. Those coffees were hosted at the Moscow Chamber of Commerce lobby, and it provides the general public, including chamber members, to come and have an opportunity to ask questions to our District 5 legislators. But mainly, it's a 2-week recap of what's been happening in session. As you all know, so many things happen during that time frame, and it's nice to have those consistently taking place. In regard to collaborative efforts, we partner with the Lewiston-Clarkston Chamber of Commerce. This was actually a directive from our District 5 and District 6 legislators. The survey results that you will see, the questions that are aligned with those the questions that were created for that actually were in partnership with the Lewiston-Clarkston Chamber of Commerce so that we could get some sort of threshold and benchmark for the legislators to understand. There's also Idaho Chamber Days that takes place in Boise every year. Those of you behind your seats have participated in that, including Mayor Lambert, including Gina, including Gary, that have been down there for other requirements in Boise. And it's an opportunity for us to get in touch with our governor as well as offer insight to our District 5 legislators as well. We did provide a legislative social platform just this last month in collaboration with the Lewiston-Clarkston Chamber of Commerce. All right, on the vein of collaboration, I wanted to point out a collaborative effort that we partnered with the Latah County Historical Society, specifically Dulcie Kirsting Lark and Kendra, who was our staff member, really did the heavy lifting for this incredible exhibit. So it was at our chamber lobby for 6 weeks. The dates are listed on the slide. And the total attendance was about 2,300. There were 17 groups that visited with a total of 450 children, which is really remarkable. During this time, we had an opportunity to share some of our printed publications and tangible material, not only to community members, but for folks that specifically came outside of Latah County or amongst Latah County to see this exhibit. I really have to commend Dulcie for providing this opportunity and the Humanities Council. She understands the fact that not everyone can get to DC and go to a museum, and she provided a lot of the resources in regard to getting the students here, so we really appreciate that. Listed here are some of the material that we produce on an annual basis. We've really been elevating our digital marketing arm, and I will be talking about our Visit Moscow ID collaboration a little bit later. But this includes our annual publications as well as efforts that we elevate all throughout the year in regard to ads. Specifically, that advertising comes from a bucket of funds from the Idaho Travel Council. It's a competitive grant that we request funds for every May. And previously, we received about $70,000. We're now in the upwards of $99,000 annually. So we're grateful that the Idaho Travel Council appreciates what we're doing, and we continue to elevate different sponsorship opportunities as well as getting folks into our area to elevate our heads in beds for tourism dollars. We did a regional and downtown map that's really fun and colorful. We have that at Friendship Square. And then this is part of the Community University Strategic Partnership. Some of you were a part of that years ago that brought together leadership amongst the community and elevated this brand that we've really been using quite a bit. You'll see it outside of our lobby entrance on the glass on the lower section. We have all of that branding there. And that really is not just a single Moscow Chamber of Commerce effort. That really is a collaborative effort amongst the City of Moscow, the Moscow Chamber of Commerce, and the University of Idaho. Leadership from all of those entities have access to Visit Moscow ID and are able to make adjustments when necessary. So we have individuals associated with University of Idaho in conferences, recreation, Jen, as well as the Community Events Department, associated with the City of Moscow as a part of it. And we're just really grateful for the fact that this branding was created and we're able to utilize it so much. And the most recent addition to our branding is a co-op that we're utilizing with Rogers Subaru located down in Lewiston. In regard to projects and initiatives, we have quite a few, and I'll try to be brief, but one that isn't listed up on here is our collaboration with the Moscow Pullman Regional Airport and the priorities of the airport board, as well as Tony Bean, the executive director there. We participate in an effort to go to a conference where we discuss opportunities for different airlines to come here, and so we appreciate being a part of that. We also organize and provide platforms with the business community for our Coffee with a Cop, and that's a joint effort between the Latah County Sheriff's Office as well as the Moscow Police Department. As all of you know, we're extremely lucky to have the community policing platform that has been elevated through Chief Fry. And we also help support our women and men in blue through elevating a program during Law Enforcement Appreciation Day in January, where we provide meals for them and acknowledge that national holiday at our lobby. Based on the rapid market assessment that took place, that at the time, Catherine Bonzo was the city council liaison. She participated and volunteered in regard to collecting information, and you've seen that data that over 10,000 adults are coming through our market. I won't berate you with the statistics again. However, it did help us determine that we needed to be open, that we had a missed opportunity in regard to our office hours, and so we started being open May through October, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and that's largely based on the City of Moscow Farmers Market. And we've gotten a lot of folks that are really interested in coming to see us during those timeframes. If you'll excuse me, I seem to have put one page not in the right order, forgive me. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I would like to conclude with two programs that really have become such a wonderful platform that's under the umbrella of the Moscow Chamber of Commerce. And those two, one is quite new and the other is not. And the first one is Moscow Young Professionals. You'll see the mission of Moscow Young Professionals listed here, and you will also see a photo from the second annual Community Involvement Fair. Some of you may have been a part of that, but that provides a platform for nonprofits as well as city commissions to provide information to individuals in the community that want to be involved in something new. So that actually takes place the 1912 every August, and we want to make sure that if folks don't have the financial means to support an effort, that if they have the time and the commitment to do so, there's lots of opportunity here in our community. Leadership Moscow is not a new program by any means. It was reinvigorated years ago, and it is a 8-month program that provides professional development as well as an understanding of the function of our region. The Leadership Moscow Steering Committee consists of myself, Brandon Allen, Jim Miller, Kendra Ewing, as well as our staff liaison, Aaron Dutton. You'll see a photo there of last year's class. We do sincerely appreciate the support from the City of Moscow by not only sending participants, but also engaging in the program. So just last Thursday, the cohort received a deep dive into the City of Moscow by hearing about the structure of the city by Gary Riedner, community involvement from Tyler Palmer, a city council roundtable, as well as a tour of the 1912 Center and an engaging presentation from our very own Mayor, Bill Lambert. We really appreciate your support of the program. There are few areas truly that I think we have the opportunity to collaborate as much as we do. I hope I made that really clear throughout my presentation, that we have such a strong business community as well as university presence and our city, and we just really appreciate the dynamic capacity for all the things that we can be a part of. And I would stand for any questions.
Well, Jenny, you wear many hats as our chamber executive, and one of those things that Jenny didn't mention this, but I'm going to, because it's going to be in my reports on the Veteran Day dinner that you emceed last Monday night, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It was a wonderful turnout.
Thank you.
I'm just curious,
Yes.
how many businesses do we have in the chamber now?
So in regard to membership, and so that, just to be clear, that doesn't mean that that's
It could
necessarily
be
an individual
individuals.
business. Okay.
Right.
Thank
It could be
you.
individuals too.
484.
484, that's amazing. And one of the things I want to comment on is that Smithsonian exhibit that was up from August the 23rd to October the 4th. I thought that was absolutely fabulous, and I heard nothing but compliments. I don't know how many times on that, Jenny, and that was a big deal for us. So, Kelsey, you got some questions for Jenny or comments?
I just want to commend you for being open during the farmer's market on Saturday morning. I think that's been a great innovation.
Yep.
Thank you. We understand that the city was doing some heavy lifting for us when it came to telling folks where to shop and where to eat and where to go, and it's nice that we can be available for them, for the resources that they need.
Other
I have
comments?
one
Okay.
question. The chamber member survey, legislative
Yes.
survey, is that just shared with the District 5 legislators, or does it?
So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So the main purpose of it is to share it with our District 5 legislators, and we try to reference that back all throughout our coffees with them. However, it is accessible to members. We had it on our web, last year when we did the survey, we had it on our website, and it was in a pretty simple format. And we're taking the time to make sure that it's more digestible. When we had it posted previously, it was just in a rather simple format. Not that it was bad, but we're just trying to elevate it so we get more people reading it.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, well, Jenny, you have you do a terrific job as executive director of the chamber, and you've got a wonderful crew of
Thank you.
professionals that work with you too. They're always up to snuff, and I love it when I just get to walk in there and spring a surprise on one of them. I love this, one of my most favorite things to do, and they're always very cordial, and I don't know necessarily if they're happy to see me, but but that being said, they're always very professional in what they do, so thank you guys for your good work.
Thank you, Mayor Lambert. Thank you, Council.
Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 6, ERP financial software purchase approval. Gary Reedner, you have got the podium, sir. Good job.
That will be reflected in your evaluation, Chief.
Certainly, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What I'm here to talk to you about tonight is a proposal to replace our financial software. There's a new game in town, it's called Enterprise Resource Planning. Enterprise Resource Planning is a comprehensive software that has different modules to it, but what it is it is a easily usable financial software. One of the things that we're looking for is to break down some of the silos that we have with our different software packages, and ERP software would allow us to do that. Different modules including permitting, some other modules that we might be able to use as well. Those would allow us to communicate across the entire platform of financial software. The software that we have Springbrook software. We purchased it about 16 years ago when Don Palmer first came to us as finance director. He had some experience with the software. They're out of Portland. At that point, we had very few choices for financial software, mainly because we couldn't find software that was scalable for a city of our size. Springbrook at the time was the one that appeared to be the most flexible. It had several software modules as well. We used some of those modules in subsequent years, abandoning the ones that we took on mainly because they didn't serve our needs or they were incompatible and didn't work well with the general package. So, over the years, the current software has been expensive to maintain. We have upgraded it when we need to. This past year, we proposed in the city budget that we wanted to implement a convenience fee. That convenience fee was the cost of about 3% or somewhere in that range for the use of digital transactions. You pay a city fee with a credit card, a utility bill, with a debit card, or any sort of financial transaction that wasn't just a check or cash. And Idaho law was recently changed to allow cities to charge convenience fees, much as any other merchant who uses digital commerce. What it does is, if you're not allowed to collect that, then it's very expensive. We've had a lot of our citizens elect to use electronic payments, and in this year's budget, we're estimating approximately $140,000 in convenience fees because of the amount of those digital transactions. We approached Springbrook to talk to them about we would like to implement the convenience fee through our existing financial billing software, and we were told that they do not do that and either can't or won't do it. Either way, it didn't serve the city's needs. So At the budget hearing, you recall, we discussed we would be trying to find some other alternatives. There are some standalone alternatives for collecting convenience fees. However, when looking at the overall software package itself, we can utilize several of them already have that capability. In addition, earlier last year, we had a transaction downstairs where we were trying to track a bill through when it was assessed against, it was a utility bill, assessed against a residence, and we were going back trying to find the history of that bill. We could not, what we call an audit trail. It essentially audits every transaction. If someone goes in and changes something, then you can find out when it was changed, who changed it, under what authorization, so on and so forth. What it allows us to do is to cross-reference. If something comes up that needs to be checked, we can go back, find out the date it was changed, so on and so forth. Very common in financial software. We attempted to do it in our current software package. We ran it down. It took us about 2 weeks before we found out that in order to utilize that part of the software, we would have had to go to a cloud-based system, which included an additional subscription fee, something that you would expect to have in your software and was provided in the software until they went to a cloud-based system. So all in all, it got down to the point whether we continue to work with the software package that increasingly is failing to meet our needs, or do we determine whether we should go out and try to find a different software package. We researched it and determined that, worked with a couple of, talked to a couple of cities in northern Idaho, Sandpoint, and Hayden, who recently issued RFPs for ERP software, looked at some of the things that they did, reviewed their proposal. I was back in Nashville for the ICMA conference, stopped and talked to different software package firms, and determined that there are alternatives out there that are would better meet our needs. So, rather than proceed and wait till the following budget year, it's staff's proposal that we would like to proceed with an RFP at this time. The reason is we are in a time frame where if we issue the RFP, receive responses, we should be able to get the software implemented prior to next budget year, which would be a bonus. The best time to implement software packages like this is after the end of your audit. We're in year end right now. That audit should be done late December, early January. Of course, we report on the audit in March. So that is the best time for our finance department to be doing that. It also loops in utility billing. It'll loop in community development and other departments as well. We've determined that even though there was no money budgeted in this year's budget, we are able to proceed if council gives us authorization. A large part of the cost of this is through utilities because utility billing is a big part of the software package. We've determined that the cost likely will be somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000. $80,000 we've determined we could stand in the water, sewer, and sanitation utilities, and it would be about $120,000 in the general fund. General fund, of course, would also fund Parks and Recreation, all the special revenue funds that are supported by the general fund. In the utilities, we have sufficient appropriation to go ahead. I believe we have sufficient appropriation. If not, we can do it in the open budget process for the $80,000. The $120,000 we will have to do an open budget process for. We would utilize unanticipated fund balance to pay for that. Unanticipated fund balance, as I've explained before, are funds that were appropriated in fiscal year 2019, but because of whatever circumstances were not expended in 2019. So those funds would be typically split up among capital funds, fleet, street, general fund. What we're asking is to withhold $120,000 of that, keep it in fund balance, and utilize it to go ahead and proceed with the RFP for this ERP software. It just appears at this time that we can either sit for another year and perhaps not be able to collect convenience fees, which, by the way, council approved assessing of the convenience fees. We just have no way to collect it at this point. So it will be $140,000 estimate, if our estimate is correct, will be $140,000 that we cannot recoup until we find some way to collect it. So, because the finance department, the best time to implement is around this time of year in the next couple of months, we would like to proceed. What I'm asking is that the council authorize us to issue a request for proposals, which is this nice little document here. It's really technical. It's been reviewed by staff, legal, administration, just about anybody who'd take a look at it, we've had take a look at it. We're asking council to authorize us to go ahead and issue the RFP and allow us to fund potential purpose in the manner in which was outlined in the memo that I've included in your packets, and that council direct us to bring this forward in the annual open budget process to approve an appropriation, an additional appropriation if it's necessary.
Okay, comments to Gary. Gina?
I have complete confidence in the fact that jettisoning, extra syllable there, an old software that is unable and/or unwilling to update or be updated is a definite step forward in efficiency and probably quality of life after you get done learning how to use it. So I really am in favor of this. I think it's important to do.
Art?
Yeah, you indicated that that Springbrook has some elevated maintenance costs. Do a lot of those costs disappear with the advent of new software?
The ones that we've looked, and of course, we don't know until we get the RFP, but the software packages that Hayden and Sandpoint purchased included migration of our data over to the new software, which is a huge issue. And the maintenance fees were less. Of course, we're bigger towns than they are, so if it is proportional, I imagine it will be more than they did. But at that rate, for that package, which we don't know if that's the one that would be chosen, the annual maintenance fees are likely to be less. There are more expensive packages. There are probably 4 different software packages that I know anything about at this point. City of Pullman utilizes one. The only other city in Idaho, I believe, that utilizes Springbrook is, I believe it's Twin Falls. Some use an Oracle package. So there are several different types of softwares, but I'm assuming they're all priced differently, Art. I've not been able to look at each one. In order for a software company to come in, actually assess your needs and give you a bid, you can't really do that. They aren't going to come in and estimate just for the heck of estimating, which is why we have the RFP process. But we fully expect that it should be more economical.
Sure. So the being able to recapture the convenience fees, it would just be a matter of time before that pays for the purchase of the new software, and beyond that point, it would be
Well, the
cost
convenience
savings,
fee, convenience fee, as we explained in the budget process, is not something that we just add on to every
Right.
bill. It's only the bills where somebody is using a digital or a electronic funds transfer. So being able to do that, it is just the funding that we are paying to the bank or to Springbrook or a software vendor to allow us to be able to do that. So the city isn't making money on a convenience fee. It's just if we have no way to bill it to the people who are getting the advantage of it, then what happens is we end up having to pay it out of other revenues from the city.
right. And from earlier,
What it does is just reduce the cost,
right.
what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
Earlier discussions about for those who like the convenience of electronic bill paying, there still will be the option, I'm going off on a little tangent here, but to do electronic bill pay from your bank that is not using a credit card and does not charge a fee to either the user or the city. So that's a way around that.
Yeah, cash or check doesn't have a convenience fee affiliate or associated with it. I would note that some of the, or at least the one outside vendor that we could utilize to bill essentially, it just collects the fee. City does not make any money on that. We essentially would say, okay, you do this and you get to collect the convenience fee and keep it for yourself. But at least it's not a drain on city funds that we otherwise aren't able to recoup.
With that, I move to authorize staff to issue a request for proposals for enterprise resource planning software, and the funds for such purchase will be appropriated in the city's open budget process in accordance with the attached memo from the city supervisor.
Second.
Okay, further discussion from anyone? Okay, we have a motion by Catherine and a second by Gina to authorize staff to issue a request for proposal for the enterprise resource planning software, and the funds for such purchase will be appropriated in the city's open budget process in accordance with the attached memo from the city supervisor. I'll start the roll with Catherine.
Aye.
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 Okay, Gary. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to item number 7, which is sustainability update. We have Tyler Palmer with us this evening. Hello, Tyler.
Mayor, how are you?
Good.
Council, pleasure to be here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come and talk about this really critical topic here. I'm super excited about this. This is something that I think one of the fun challenges of working for a city is that there's a forced practicality in the work. Local government, to me, has always been very engaging because we provide the most basic human needs. It's the critical stuff that we deal with: water, drainage, sewer, transportation, all of those things that touch all of our residents every day and allow us to go about our day-to-day lives. And we don't get the option to not do those things. We don't get the option to just, well, you know, this is a tough challenge, I guess we'll just shut the water off and go home type of a thing. And so we always have to really look at things through a lens of practicality, but also I enjoy working in the city of Moscow because with the direction and leadership of our elected officials, there's an expectation that we lead in areas, that we want to be a city that does things right, and works hard to be a leader on key issues. And sustainability is no exception. From a very early time, Moscow has been a leader in our state and our region on sustainability initiatives. And I'm here today to give an update on some of our sustainability initiatives that we've been working on over the past several years. One of the measures that we've taken is in 2016 we established an environmental service department. It's called the Environmental Service Group, recently transitioned to a department. That's something that's really pretty unheard of for a city our size, and it was a demonstration of the commitment. And the reason that we did that was that we realized that there were a lot of sustainability initiatives spread throughout the city, and we wanted to have one clearinghouse, one group of people that really focus on the environmental compliance and environmental issues that face the city. And so we formed that department, and we've seen a lot of success from that. And so I'm going to run through just really quickly hitting highlights because there's a lot in here that you'll see. What we've been doing and what we've been working on. In 2007, the city joined the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, known as ICLEI, and as a fully participating member in the Cities for Climate Protection campaign, what the city pledged to do was take on 5 milestones to reduce greenhouse gas and air pollution. Those 5 milestones are to conduct a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast to determine the source, quantity of greenhouse gas emissions in the jurisdiction, establish a greenhouse gas emissions reduction target, develop an action plan with both existing and future actions, which, when implemented, will meet local greenhouse gas reduction targets, implement the action plan, and monitor and report progress. In continuation of those goals, in 2010, the city adopted a 20% reduction goal. Initially, that was benchmarked to 2005, but that benchmark year was updated to 2008, where we had better information and better data. Since then, we've been working pretty diligently toward accomplishing that 20% goal. Interestingly, in a 2017 City Commission survey, a question was asked to residents which stated, there are concerns that adverse climate patterns are having an effect on precipitation, temperatures, aquifer recharge, snowpack, air quality, and pest incursion on the Palouse. And then the question was asked, people gauged whether they were very concerned, from very concerned to not concerned at all. And 68% of the respondents noted that they were either concerned or very concerned about this issue, whereas only 10% said that they weren't concerned. It's a real indication that there's a broad consensus in our community that this is a problem and that it's something that the city should be focusing on. So the city conducts biannual greenhouse gas inventories. It's something that we've done every 2 years since 2012 in order to track our progress on this issue. We've taken a lot of steps that have helped quite a bit with the city's greenhouse gas footprint, and I'm going to run through a few of those here. Traffic signal upgrades is a big one. You know, something as simple as that. When we had the big incandescent bulbs, you have a 10-inch bulb in a traffic signal that's going 24/7, 365. That consumes a lot of energy, and so the transition to LED bulbs just on that was a big deal. We had our Hamilton Low Aquatic Center and Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center LED upgrades and the upgrades to the boiler. Our eco driver and fleet initiatives that we'll talk a little bit more about, and LED lighting upgrades. And so I'm going to run through a few of these again, just kind of hitting highlights on this. These are from 2008. This shows 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2016. Where each sector was at. That's included in your packet. If you'd like more details, I can certainly make this available. So some of the future projects that we've got are we've been cooperating with Avista for an expedited change out of the LED street lights in our residential public illumination system, so the street lights in the residential areas. It's something that Avista has agreed to work with us to expedite the change out to LED bulbs on those, and that's a big savings for the city. We are also looking at alternate energy sources for some city facilities. Our eco-driver program, you all are very familiar with this, I believe, and so I won't go into a lot of detail. Just reminder that prior to the implementation of the program, we were seeing a roughly 4% increase annually in fuel use. We established a baseline year of 2011. And since then, we've seen significant decreases in our fuel consumption with the fleet. It averages about 60,000 pounds of CO2 annually that we're saving just by our fuel reductions, and that it doesn't count the money that we're saving. You're looking at 10,000 plus gallons of fuel at between $2.50 to $3.50 a gallon. It's no small amount, and that's been solely through good practices, low use reviews, and our employees just really planning trips, paying attention to how we operate the vehicles. One of the things that we're really excited about that we have recently launched is our alternate fuel transition plan. This is something that Fleet's been working on for the last year. We've been doing some of this, but we really wanted to formalize an alternate fuel transition plan. And so the idea, it's a challenging thing because the relatively small size of our community and our geographic isolation, it really makes it imperative that Fleet makes cautious and deliberate decisions. I don't know if any of you on your way into the building today saw the sewer jet truck right outside here working on a line. Pieces of equipment like that, we've got one, and it's an absolutely imperative piece of equipment. It's necessary to keep the pipes flowing, and so we don't have the option to not have a reliable vehicle doing that job. And so we're in a kind of an odd position because we're not big enough to have 4 of them, but we're big enough and we have urban enough system and an urban enough infrastructure that we do need one of them, but we need it to work. And so that's something that we really have to look at, but we also want to, as aggressively as possible, get our fleet to a very sustainable level and get out of, and eventually eliminate the use of fossil fuels in our fleet as it makes sense. And so with that, we've come up with a strategy. There are lenses through which we will look at vehicle replacements. The first lens is there a viable electric or hybrid model that can complete the task? 2 are there opportunities for combined use with another vehicle? And 3, does the proposed vehicle best meet the needs for which it is intended? And that has led already to the change out of several vehicles. You may recall that we purchased an electric vehicle several years ago. That was the one that's pictured here with Mayor Lambert in Friendship Square. But we also, it's not just the EVs that we buy, but it's being creative and really looking at what can we do right now as we transition toward more options being available. And so these are some examples. Unit 220 was a dual diesel engine design sweeper, and we were able to replace it with a single diesel engine design sweeper. May not seem like a lot, but that second engine eats up a lot of fuel. And as we looked at the operations, we realized, you know what, with what we need this to do, we can skinny this down and we can drop a second motor. Unit 222 was a heavy-duty diesel water mag truck, and we replaced it with a light-duty gas engine, and then made it a multi-use vehicle that spreads magnesium chloride, which is an anti-icing compound, a plow, and a dump truck. And so it's efforts like these that just over the last several years, 10 years ago, we had 2 different units that were out spreading magnesium chloride, the anti-icing, and that's all they did. They sat all summer, they went out and spread magnesium chloride occasionally during the winter. And since then, we've gone from 2 to 1 large truck down to 1 small truck that's a multi-use truck. And so it's efforts like that where we really try and be thoughtful and be creative. Unit 701 was a half-ton pickup, and it was replaced with a small crossover SUV. Those are some that we really want to look at targeting for electric vehicles as we move forward. As you see in FY 2020, in this year's budget, we have a half-ton pickup that will go to an electric vehicle. We have another half-ton pickup that will go to an electric vehicle. We plan on replacing the sewer jet truck, the one that we were just talking about outside here, which is a dual-engine model with a single-engine model. And then also, a huge step for us is the police interceptors. That is going to have a really big impact. We anticipate that alone is likely to save us about 10,000 gallons of fuel annually. And so that's really huge once we get all of those swapped out, and really appreciate the police department's work with us and their commitment to that. Yeah.
Could you touch on the timing of when are you considering these vehicle replacements? As something is coming to, when you know it's going to be time to replace it, you start looking to see if there's...
Yeah, we have a comprehensive vehicle replacement program, and so we really what we don't want to do is wait until something is broken and out the door and worthless before we consider the replacement. And so we've got a program where we have an estimated life for the vehicle, and we look at the metrics. We look at how much it's costing us to maintain that vehicle. We look at the type of vehicle. There's a lot of components that go into the estimation of the life of that vehicle, and so then it comes up in a rotation. And what we do at that point is we start to accumulate toward the replacement, so that when the replacement year comes up, the idea is that we'll have the money in the bank for the replacement. And then we look at it with finance, administration, and fleet as we go through the budget process, and we determine, you know what, this is a great vehicle. This one's fine to stick around. We can eke a little bit more life out of this one. But this one may need to go, and we may have some that are just lemons and need to go early. And so we do have a pretty robust plan for that we run through every year.
But as far as replacing them with lower carbon footprint vehicles, that's not likely to happen until that vehicle is determined to need replacing.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't have the funds. Fleet's always a tough one to fund. It's a really tough, especially in some funds that tap the general fund. So you look at like our fire and our police vehicles, a lot of our street vehicles. It's difficult to accumulate the funding. And so what we've done is we've gone and looked at the future list, and we've gone out about 10 years and identified all the vehicles that we can replace. The technology is changing so quickly that we hesitate to go out further than that, because with new technology coming out, for example, we've got electric pickup trucks that could become a reality very shortly. So when some of that technology comes out, we want to stay nimble and be able to adopt that new technology as it's proven as a viable alternative for us. Does that answer your question, Brenda?
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to jump into our water conservation, our Wisescape. And we've talked about this as well, so I'm not going to jump into this. I'm not going to go too far into it. The thing that I really want to hit on here with the Wisescape is that not only is it a water saver, but it saves greenhouse gas emissions pretty significantly. When you look at the numbers for greenhouse gas emissions, it's about a sixth of the greenhouse gas emissions, and that was in the first year. We tracked really closely. This was 1,400 square feet, and we tracked all of the inputs into the maintenance of the Y-scape versus the grass. And because we wanted to have a good apples-to-apples comparison. And so that's a true apples-to-apples comparison for that space. And in the first year, as anyone who's installed the Y-scape knows, it takes a lot more effort in the first year. So those numbers have actually diminished since that first year. But not only do we save almost 80% of the water use, but also a significant amount of the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with that. And that's, that's due to things like running edgers and mowers, and then the greenhouse gas associated with fertilizers. And then there's just the diminished labor component. You're not, since there's less labor, you're not having to drive a truck with a trailer hauling a mower to the site. Somebody goes over with a bucket and pulls some weeds. And so it's just a pretty significantly smaller impact. Another thing that we've implemented and we continue to implement, and we'll see further impacts from, is our water system operational updates. We recently had the state revolving fund monies come to the council to finish the updates, the construction and development of well 10 and the rest of the booster stations. That has a direct impact. When we have that modern infrastructure with things like variable frequency drives, which basically is like a dimmer on a pump, so instead of just being on or off, you can customize how hard it's running to the need, and that's very important. But we've also transitioned through a lot of work by Mike Parker and his staff toward a sustained pressure system. So rather than just a fill and draw system where it just fills up, draws down to a certain level and fills back up, we maintain a consistent pressure in the system. And what that's allowed us to do is we've decreased 5 million gallons in our filter backwash and 15 million gallons annually in flushing, just by those updates to system operation. When you look at that, that's a 5% decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions associated with water production. And water production is one of the largest users of electricity in the city. It takes a lot of electricity to run those big pumps. And so those types of operational updates not only save water, but they have a big impact on our greenhouse gas emissions. And I think this is an example of why it's fun to look at this as a city, is that it's not just, okay, I'm gonna not drive as much and I'm going to I'm going to, look at a different heat in my house or a smart thermometer. We have to look at it so comprehensively because all of our activities have an impact and can have a really big impact. I mean, when you look at, for example, the 5 million gallons, that's the equivalent of changing out 500 toilets in the city. And that was just one systemic update that we were able to make to save that much. We had an LED light bulb retrofit. There was an Avista rebate in 2016, and our facilities group in our parks department did a really great job of taking advantage of that, and they changed out a lot of bulbs throughout the city. That project resulted in a savings of approximate annual savings of 24 metric tons of CO2 just by changing those out, and about $6,000 annually. And so there's cost savings associated with this. We recently brought to you the Environmental Stewardship Award. We've got that, all the launching materials being put together right now for that. This is something that we've really been looking at ways to help encourage the community to engage in these activities and to push this messaging out to the community. And the Environmental Stewardship Award, we think, will be a key component to that. It looks at several different areas. We have partners. We formed the program in cooperation with Lake Tahoe Sanitation and Avista, and so it looks at things like electricity use, water use, the sewer system, the fog, all of these things that go into sustainability. And there's 2 different tiers that a business can meet based on the number of components that they meet in this program. So we're looking forward to a launch on that. We should have our early adopters up and going by Earth Week this year, and plan on having a report on that for the council around Earth Week. So yeah, those are the categories for the Environmental Stewardship Award. There's business practices, community, water conservation, sewer use, stormwater management, waste management, energy use, and transportation. Our water reclamation and reuse facility. This is a big user of electricity, and it's one that we've really worked on making more sustainable. Even the name change, we want to emphasize the importance of renewing these resources and reusing them. And Moscow's been a leader in this area. We had if not the first, one of the very first reuse systems in the entire Northwest. 3.5 billion gallons of water since 1977 that we have not pumped from the aquifer and sent up to the university, and they use that to water most of their green space up there, including their golf course. So that's just an enormous savings. And when you think about the impacts that just those systemic updates that we made to the water system have, you can imagine how much energy and how much greenhouse gas emissions would have been associated with pumping an additional 3.5 billion gallons of water, let alone the impact of the aquifer. And so that's a big impact for us. Active transportation. The city has worked really hard on building a good active transportation system. In 2014, the City Council adopted Moscow on the Move, which is our multimodal transportation plan. That plan contains a lot of active transportation components. As an offshoot of that, the City of Moscow Bike Route and Facilities Plan was adopted by the Council in 2016. We are about 85% implemented now, and we plan on implementing the rest of that system this next summer. And those are things that we really love to see happen because Moscow already has such a great mode split. You know, our mode split rivals places like Portland, Oregon. We have a lot of people who bike and walk for transportation, and providing appropriate infrastructure for that is a big deal for us. One of the things that I think often, as we talk about just comprehensively looking at things, gets overlooked is how the city code can impact sustainability community-wide. And, you know, that comes down to things like what do we allow to be built and where? And how do we encourage infill and growth? And so we have development initiatives, including compact and walkable developments, you know, twin homes, townhouses, planned unit developments. We recently went through all of the work to get a good accessory dwelling unit standard in place. We have bicycle parking initiatives. We have the green building program. We also have increased allowance for residential development in the commercial zoning districts because we want to promote that infill and the mixed-use development. And also the new urban mixed commercial district to promote mixed-use development between downtown and the University of Idaho campus. All of these things that can make us more compact and more walkable not only contribute to a reduction in greenhouse gases, but also to a vibrant community. And so that's a big component of this that we're very excited about. Our pavement management program. You all are pretty familiar with our efforts in this regard. The council has really done a great job in increasing our funding for this. Not only does this make our roads last longer and keep them in better condition, but it also has a pretty significant impact on sustainability. You can imagine how intensive, from a greenhouse gas perspective, rebuilding a road is. You're ripping out asphalt. Asphalt is an oil-based product. You're producing new. You have all of the trucks and all of the equipment and the heating and everything that goes into that. It's a very, very intensive process. And so if we can prolong pavement's life, I mean, with appropriate treatments, sometimes double the life of the pavement otherwise. You know, you can take it from 20 to 40 plus years. That has an enormous impact. But in addition to that, studies have shown that just by having better roads, that saves up to 5% of emissions, just because for the drivers, they get better fuel economy, there's less impact on their tires, and so the cars run better and run more efficiently. And so some of those small things can have an impact beyond what we think about. Our chemical weed control alternative, this is something that we implemented last year. We were, if not the first, it was certainly the first in the whole Northwest, but we may be the first municipality in the states to implement this program. And it's something that we're very excited about, where we're using hot water for weed control rather than chemicals. This obviously has an impact with the chemicals in our environment, in our right-of-way, but it also has a greenhouse gas impact because we're not using those chemicals, and those are pretty intensive, not only to apply, but also to produce. And so that's something that we're happy we were able to get in place. A couple other things that I'll just mention quickly. We have our solid waste management, which obviously is a big activity in the city. Currently, the city diverts about 32% of the materials from being landfilled. One of the things that I will mention, though, is that recently the recycling climate has been very volatile. You know, with China and some of the things that have happened with the recycling that they've taken, it kind of goes back to what we've talked about the forced practicality. We're really taking a hard look at what makes sense and trying to get numbers together so that we can take a very realistic look at how do we best approach this and how do we most responsibly approach this. And so that's been a challenge of late, but we're working to come up with some good alternatives. There's a Waste-Wise program, so all those of you who've been to city events, we try and really minimize any waste at the city events by having a system where we gather the compostable items and keep things from being landfilled. Another great one is the pesticide use in city parks. That's been an awesome thing that the Parks Department's worked on. They've had 2 pilot parks. They had Lillian Ottness and the Asbury Almond Park that they've done the pilot on, and really encouraged by the results. And so that's something that we've been excited to see happen. And a lot of small things, like the police have a bicycle program where we have cops on bikes that go and patrol and do work from a bicycle, which is can seem like a small thing, but I think that also sets a great example when people see the police officers out on a bicycle and realize that if that's a reasonable means of conducting their job, that, you know, maybe that's not a bad thing to do, get out and ride the bike somewhere. And so with that, you know, we really look forward to the continued leadership from the mayor and council on this. It's something that as staff, we are really committed to trying to make Moscow as sustainable as we possibly can. It's a place that I think we all love, and we want many, many future generations to be able to experience it the way that we have, and that means trying to find responsible, sustainable ways of running a big operation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, with that, Tyler, it's going to be for us and for anyone an ongoing program for sustainability, and just work on it, work on it, work on it. It'll never go away. It's something that's going to continue to chip away, and we need to chip away. It's an important thing to do. Questions for council or comments? Art?
I just have a comment about the vehicle replacement program. It's very wise to use the vehicles up before replacing them, because even though there's more efficient hybrids or electric vehicles out there, the environmental cost of producing one of those outweighs the impact of the older vehicle in terms of its gasoline usage. So I really like the way that you're structuring the vehicle replacement program to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Well, we know, and to add to that, Art, and Tyler told us this when we were going through the budget, you know, 10 to 12 years out, the whole thing will be rotated through. So we got to keep chipping away at it, and once you're there, then it's a cakewalk, because you just continue. And the points that you made about efficiencies and what they do and develop and make as time goes on, it'll just get a little better and a little better, because it's just going to work that way. So.
Yeah, I wanted you, it wasn't in this packet, but you did talk about the in-building. Are you going to add that to this?
Yeah, that's a section that we hope to add. There's a few other things that we want to add to that memo to flesh it out a little bit further, and that's one of them that we want to add.
And I thought I'd tell you today that I took 450 pounds since the recycling day we had that was put into a bale.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll.
Good.
So they'll figure out how all that plays out with all this.
Yeah.
Brandy, do you have a comment to you?
How are you measuring the emissions? Is it just through energy and fuel usage?
So we have a program that ICLEI actually provides, and so it's kind of a benchmark program. And there's Kelly Cooper, who's our sustainability technician, is the one that runs that software for us, and there are all kinds of inputs that go into that. So yeah, it takes into account all of our fuel usage. It takes into account all of our energy usage. So we take the Avista bills directly, and we input all of that into the program. There are surveys about employee commutes that are conducted to try and capture that. So yeah, there's a whole ton of inputs that go into it. And if you're ever interested in a really deep dive, Kelly could take you on a super deep dive on that stuff.
I guess a comment, it sounds like this goal, this prior one was pretty spot on for what, where you ended up. So.
We're really we've got a project that we think will get us past that 20% goal line, but just past that 20% goal line. So it was a good goal. We've been aggressively after it, and yeah, we're going to get there, but probably just barely.
So I saw that, Boise is doing the 100, Ready for 100. With all the things that we're doing as a city, do you think that's somewhere we could be thinking about being?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, Moscow has been a leader on this stuff, and I don't see any reason that we couldn't look at some of those things and see if they're feasible for the city of Moscow.
Okay, well, thank you. Good report, Tyler.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for the work everybody's doing on that. That's awesome. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item number 8, which is the strategic planning report. Gary is going to talk about.
Thank you, Your Honor. Strategic planning is something that has become near and dear to my heart over the last 5 or 6 years. In fact, it's such a big issue that I will be only the first of 3 people who will be helping to present. And part of the reason for that is I'm here as kind of the old man talking about where we came from, what we're doing. Jen will be coming up talking about status, some of the things we've done to modernize the process and become more transparent. And Jesse Flowers, who has recently joined our dedicated team to strategic planning, is going to talk about next steps. The thing that we're doing tonight is just what it says, it's a report. We're not doing a strategic planning workshop tonight. That's more of a comprehensive type situation that really needs the input of the council that will be seated as of the beginning of January, because they will be the ones charged with implementing that strategic plan as well. With that being said, I really appreciate the current council and previous councils who have helped us get where we are. By way of history, and don't want to belabor the point, you've heard me say it for years, we started looking at strategic planning in 2002. We were unable to do that, so we ended up taking about a 12-year period to develop the background that we needed to actually do strategic planning. So we'll go through that a little bit tonight, but mostly what we're going to talk is where we are and where we're going in the future. One of the first things that the 2002 strategic plan did for us is it set the stage with our mission statement, which has been hanging on the wall of city council chambers forever. Since that time, we also, on the back of everybody's business card in the city, is this same mission statement. The idea is to always check to make sure whatever activity you're engaging in furthers that mission statement and builds public trust in the city. Our value statement was gleaned from all of the documents, plans, the strategic plan itself, what we are trying to do, and what we hope to be as a city government. So you read through that. I won't read it all today, but what we want to do is be as highly efficient and dynamic as we can be in providing the services so that we're providing the best services to the citizens of the city. So those are the baselines. Those are the cornerstones of what we're doing. We've been engaged in this. We didn't go back to 2002. We went to modern times. In October of 2014, we began the planning process. Mayor Lambert and I were in Boise at a Association of Idaho Cities conference, and I asked him if we would like to meet John Luthi, who is the consultant who helped us develop our strategic plan. The mayor and I went to John's office. We had a long talk. It wasn't too long after that he came to Moscow, made a proposal. Council liked it. We moved ahead, and it took us about 2 years to get that process done. As John indicated, it is a process that is built on folks who are actually doing the work in the field. What are the challenges that are keeping us from implementing the council's policies or their aspirations, if you will? So staff spent a bunch of time preparing different documentation, one of the first of which was called an operational overview. You've all seen that in the various packets that you've been distributed over the years. But the idea was you can't tell where you're going to go until you see what you're doing today. So what happened is we asked everybody in the city, every department, to list out all the things that they do on a day-to-day basis. The reason is that you can keep stacking, and our old goal-setting process did just that. It stacked task after task after task on departments and staff when we're already running a lean operation, adding dozens of goals every year that you had no prayer of completing and were essentially short-term goals made to fit in a 1 or 2 year budget cycle, or in elected officials' parlance, getting it done in a 4-year election cycle. What that did is it really prevented us from focusing on the long term and looking realistically at the resources that we had to bring to an issue. So we did in May of 2015, we brought forward as staff a list of major challenge areas to the council. As you know, John Luthie's model focuses on major challenge areas. What are the challenges that are keeping you from achieving the mission statement that we've been living by for the last 18 years? Those major challenge areas, you've heard them all. We'll hit a few of them here in a few minutes. But we identified those major challenge areas, and for the last 3 years, we've provided updates as we're addressing each of those. And as I said, we'll hit on those in a few minutes. In September 2019, we really had a bit of a breakthrough. One of the things that, if you've ever done strategic planning, doing it in a narrative fashion is incredibly burdensome. It's like keeping a diary. A lot of times it seems like you're writing more than you're doing. So we came up, actually Jen and Jesse and a group identified Invisio as being a software that could help us implement and be more user-friendly in our strategic planning reporting. So you all have books that are up in your boxes upstairs. It doesn't look at all like the previous strategic planning reports. It's very easy to use. We'll have some examples in a few moments. But what it does is it allows you to monitor the progress that staff is making on the strategic planning major challenge areas. In November, today, what we're doing is we're giving you a report on what we've been doing, the status, and the processes that have been established. And then in February of 2020, we will have our strategic planning workshop. So that is coming. These are the driving forces that we identified early in the process that were forcing us to have to look at things. Tax implications, revenue implications, all of those things that we talk about every budget. Aging, failing infrastructure, the high cost of replacement of infrastructure. Tyler just talked about how it is better to take the assets that you've got and maintain them rather than go out, tear them up, and put new ones in. So we try to get as much bang for our buck as we can. In Moscow especially, the last bullet on the last sub-bullet on the first bullet is huge in Moscow. We have very real needs in this community. We have a school district that has high aspirations based on the community's desires, yet state funding for education is not robust enough for them to achieve that, so they have to go to the local our local taxpayers to try and get funds to support that. That naturally dips into capacity that the city and the county could utilize in providing services as well. University of Idaho enrollment has been decreasing or staying the same over the last several years when many state institutions have been increasing their enrollment significantly. So one of the major challenge areas that was identified was to assist in any way possible the university in increasing their enrollment, as they are the largest economic engine of the community. Unemployment has essentially been dealt with since the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009. Our unemployment is very low right now. However, we still see significant underemployment and lack of an educated workforce. One of the initiatives that's being pursued in the community is CTE, or Career Technical Education, in order to provide right skills for the businesses in the community. Legacies, what we wanted to have, I won't read all through them, you've seen them in the strategic planning documents, but what we want to be known for is all of the things that you see up there. Particular to me is exceptional public management. That is not just us as public managers, it's the council. It's how is the public's business being pursued. And an educated and engaged council as a result of good elections, as a result of good management from staff, you get a lot better product. So those are the legacies that we hope to achieve. And we have different priorities, and I will go through these, a few of these at least. Economic development, sustainable growth for Moscow. Nobody wants to see Moscow explode and have 8-10% growth per year. We've been pretty steady, as the economist Steve Peterson has presented a couple of times. We're anywhere between 1% and 1.5% typically of growth per year. Very sustainable. We're not going to win any awards for doubling our economic capacity, but we're able to keep up with municipal services with that growth. Revenue and resources is always a challenge. Expenses to maintain service levels will continue to outpace revenues. They have in the past, and we have no reason to believe that won't happen in the future. So we saw with projects like A Street, the 3rd Street Bridge, any number of public projects that outstrip the resources that we have to bring to the table. So we have to do things to become even more efficient. Tyler's report, I think, is timely in conjunction with this report, as we are trying to find ways to gain that efficiency. And lastly is customer service. The reach of city government, just since I've been city supervisor, has been amazing. We had 88 employees in 1992. We have 164 now, and we are still leaner than any local government in our area. The reason is over the last 30 years, services has expanded. Our public has demanded that services be provided. Our wastewater treatment plant used to be the wastewater treatment plant. Now the water reclamation reuse facility went from being a 3-person plant to 10 now? 12. And part of it is because of the permit limitations that we have to meet. So just things like that. Things have expanded that have required us to expand city staff. I mentioned in 2002 we started on a strategic planning process. Out of that we had 6 initiatives or goals, they were called at that time. We were able to do one, and that one was to revamp the city's employee benefits and compensation system, and that we were able to do. We did that within 2 years of developing that plan. The rest of the plan was all make plans so you can actually do a strategic plan. It's really hard to determine what your sewer rates should be if you don't know where your operations will be in 10 years, you don't know the status of the pipes that are in the ground, so on and so forth. So we engaged over the next 12 years. Every one of those plans that you see up there was developed at great expense to the city, but I will tell you that the return on investment from all of those plans has been worth more than the dollar cost, because it allows decisions to be made in a systematic, logical fashion. Instead of shooting in the dark, you have an idea of your goal and what the status of your resources are when you make that goal. Okay, we talked about the operation overviews. That's important for resource management. It's also important because if you're doing something day to day, unless you are so choked in resources that you can't achieve it, chances are it isn't a strategic planning MCA. Chances are a change in operations will address that. We're not going to solve everything, as we talked about. Revenues or expenses are out. Expense of service is outstripping or outpacing revenues. We're not going to change that in a couple of years. We can do things to address it. We can be transparent. We can lobby the legislature. We can inform the public. And we do that. That doesn't mean that magically all of a sudden we have all the revenues we need. It just means that we're doing everything within our power to bring the issue to light. And you'll see there are several of those. We've talked in the past of potential subjects of the update to the strategic plan, perhaps fair housing, perhaps climate change. Those are things that the city is powerless to change on its own. We can change operations, we can change processes, but it is instructive to determine what exactly within our own sphere of influence can we do. So, talked about the overviews, past successes, and what we're trying to do is to have the individual department strategic plans be fact-driven issues so that it's not pie-in-the-sky stuff, it is stuff that we can do, and we can show you how we came up with that, any of those initiatives. Okay, so start looking at, I'm on my second to last slide so you can get to the meat of this. Some of the things that we've done in the past 3 years that have been amazing. Investment in pavement conditions. You can see in 2019, we were at $1,095,000. I went back and I looked in 2013, what we were investing in pavement. It was around $200,000 per year. It would take us 2 to 3 years of accumulating funding in order to do any project of any magnitude. Replacement of fire apparatus, another resounding success. And again, with pavement, it isn't saying that that is fixing our roads. It was estimated 5 years ago that it would take about $1.2 million a year in regular maintenance dollars to keep up. And that isn't counting the initial buy-in, getting the roads where they need to be. But we've identified the problem, we're addressing it, and we will continue to address it in the future. Fire apparatus, within a period of 3 years, we've replaced 2 fire trucks. 2 fire trucks that were obsolete, that were outside of their 20-year life expectancy. And we're moving forward with a plan to replace the 3rd fire truck and the ladder truck by 2026. Public information and community engagement has gone through the roof. We've all of a sudden become digital, as you might expect. I had very little to do with that, but we have people who can do that, and we have a web presence, a social media presence. We replaced the website last year to be more intuitive. It's getting a lot of hits, a lot of information is going out on social media, and we are engaging the public. This thank you is to thank you for the work that's been done, but also to thank the community for one of our largest MCAs, and that was the substandard and unsafe police station. We worked, identified the issue. I like to tell the story that when I came here in 1992, one of the first things I heard from the police chief at the time, Dave Cameron, was that they were in a substandard facility and needed to be replaced. That was 1992. We talked about it for the next 23, 24 years. Finally, when the strategic plan came up, it was of such magnitude that approaching it on a annual or a biannual cycle, you can never get enough monies to do it, and you can never bring the efforts of the city together, enough effort to be able to bring it through. The strategic plan changed all that. We identified a site, we identified a plan, and we identified a program for bringing that issue to the city. And now we're sitting on the cusp of bidding out for a new police station in January. So I'll turn it over to Jen now, but thank you very much for your commitment. And I can say categorically that our strategic plan has been a game changer as far as the way that we approach issues in the city.
Gary, on that last slide that had the bars with the expenditures, the top one is pavement, then I don't understand what those all are. They're not lining up.
That's all pavement.
Sorry, that's all
Oh,
pavement.
okay.
And the
Different
2020
Those
number
different
isn't
years
in
from
there.
2011 to 20.
Yeah, those are annual investments in pavement projects, and I was hoping to grab the 2020 number, and I did not get it in time for tonight, so
Okay.
it does look a little bit off there. Hold on, I've got to push this in so I can actually stand up. So, good evening, thank you very much. So the binder that you, I'm sure will enjoy thoroughly, has a complete comprehensive update. It has been, like Gary said, diaries. It's like keeping 16, 17 different diaries on different projects. The Word documents are extensive, and that was leading us up to the point where we needed to do something to better manage this. So what I'm really happy to show you tonight is an update that shows where we started in 15 to where we're at now. So it's a complete overview of what's been completed, what's in progress, what's got some disruption, what's not moving forward right now because of something or other. What I'll do is start, so We talk a lot about our major challenge areas. Those are the issues that council has determined are the highest priority that we need to address very systematically and put a lot of effort towards. The issues are also important initiatives, but they're not to the level of that priority of the council. They weren't rated and vetted and accepted and adopted by the council as those major challenge areas. So our progress report legend is we talk about the different status of the actions and strategies as we move forward. Actions and strategies are the 1 year to-dos, or they can, in this instance now, we can schedule an action and strategy that's gonna maybe take 2 years. Maybe it's not scheduled to start for a year out. We can do that scheduling now with this software, so you can get an idea of what that entire approach to addressing an issue or an MCA might be. With that said, so we had, total, there were 200 and, or excuse me, I should have written this bigger. Over 300 actions and strategies, over 300 to-dos in our plan when we started in 15. What we did was go through and say, okay, those ones that have been completed, we mark them as completed. You'll see those in blue, on tracker, and green. And then some disruption, major disruption, those items are to-do items that for some reason have been stalled. We don't have resources, something else isn't ready for us to start that action or strategy. So something's going on there that we need to give it a little bit more time and attention to get it back on track.
I was looking at the key.
Mhm.
So does major mean it's over 50%?
We haven't put a qualifier or a quantifier on that. It's up to the individual department to say this is a major disruption, like it's really out of whack. So it's up to the individual's judgment at this point.
Okay, so in just knowing that though, with the little bit I've read, as a representative, am I supposed to know the details of what the disruption is? Does that matter?
So when you look at the individual department, it will usually say in its update with that action and strategy, it's a major disruption, and there should be a little comment as to why. There should be some narrative that goes with that.
Okay.
So that's what we're shooting for.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and then so major disruption upcoming is something that's scheduled to happen. You don't need to report on it yet because it's not time for it to be started. And then discontinued are anything in black items there. So I'll just go through the different categories and where our items are. Again, these are the actions and strategies. Or excuse me, I'm going to start with the issues and then we'll talk about some of the actions and strategies. Completed issues, you've got a breakdown of those. In the front of your binder, you've got status on the MCAs, those major challenge areas, and then you've got a table of all of the issues. So these are the issues that are completed, and it's a pretty impressive list when we look back to 2015. One of the things that I think is really important with this is as we took on this planning process in the beginning and we developed these issues, there were a lot of things that were certainly very long-term. There were other things that at the time seemed very long-term, and as we worked through the process, got a few things done, found that they were more like year-long projects. They were significant, they were things that needed to be addressed and handled in some way, but we have a lot of wins at this point with our issues as we're getting used to the strategic planning process. So a breakdown of each of those is here. One of the things I can point out, for instance, the farmer's market is unsustainable. So we went through a process, we developed the community events department, we've changed quite a bit there. The market now has its own strategic plan, which addresses the issues that were concerning us when we talked about the market. So that issue itself has been completed, but it's also been replaced by that farmer's market plan that we're still tracking and watching. Arts department, structure and staffing, that's another one we addressed with that breakout of the two departments there. And then other items, we've got, fire, we've got apparatus, that's an easy one to point to, the fire truck apparatus. And then I'll go back up to administration as well. Insufficient use of strategic planning to inform management and budgeting. That is a great example, is as we took on that project, we operationalized it. So that is something we do day in and day out. It'll make its way into its operational overview when we update those this coming year. So there are things that we just do regularly now. They're not some of those things that are so overwhelming and daunting that we really need to focus on it in a different way. It's just a matter of business now. So that's a lot, with a lot of these, that's where we're at. This is just the second page. Farmers Market, of course, we have one item there that's completed as we've gotten our commission structure up to date. Parks and Recreation, you're going to see quite a bit on the next page as well, or not quite a bit. There's some of the discontinued issues, which I think bear pointing out, which is why I put them on a separate slide. I think we've got everything else there. Tyler just talked about with sustainability, the bicycle, pedestrian, and transit facilities. With that bicycle facilities plan that they're planning on implementing the remainder of this year, that issue at this time has been checked off. It does not mean that we won't be looking at additional bicycle facilities or multimodal facilities. It just means that that item that we were looking to address at that time, we've taken care of those actions and strategies and made some significant headway. So discontinued issues, the reason I wanted to point these out, in particular, Parks and Recreation just updated their master plan. And so 2 of their items within here will be replaced by an updated Parks and Recreation plan. They'll have additional issues to replace those with, based on the information and the data that they pulled through with that plan. And then the city's public art program has unfulfilled potential. That was originally an arts issue, and the Moscow Arts Commission is just wrapping up their plan. I think you'll see it next month, to see the issues that are really doing a deeper dive into what those, that unfulfilled potential is and what that could look like. So they are marked as discontinued. Technically, we probably could have said replaced, but the software says discontinued. So we'll continue on with that. These are the most specific items that fall into that disruption category. So as we've looked at different things here, with engineering, we've got inadequate, inefficient GIS system. Those, I think that item in particular is scheduled to be back on track, along with completed and mandate sidewalk programs with reorganizations and some other programs that have come on. There are things that happen that we'll need to take a step back and revise our actions and strategies and move forward. The Moscow Farmers Market, you've heard updates from the Market Commission on fee structure, and that's what that issue speaks to specifically. They are a bit behind their timeline there as they work to find out or to determine what direction they'd like to go with that in the future. Ball field lighting under Parks and Recreation, that's an item that has been in the plan from the beginning, of course. We have the ball fields in place, the lighting piece. The school district has not been focusing on the lighting piece at this time, so I know Dwight will be talking with myself, Gary, and then the council on, okay, what's the direction with lighting that we want to go next? We've had that on the books to get those fields lit. I think since they were built, just to do it properly and research no spill lighting and some other things like that, so that'll be coming forward. With police, looking at increasing property crime rates and insufficient code enforcement coverage with their recruitment efforts this last year. And I'm happy to say we have a full complement of police officers. They've had a few things that have not been able to be addressed due to just a lack of staffing, so they've worked through those. Excuse me. Public utility fleet, this also ties into streets, and there is actually another Parks and Rec issue that we should probably bring into that as well. That's the shop facility. That's that facility we talked about. Even when we were looking at the bond, and if that was something we could package with other things to do a bond, the cost was just tremendously enormous. And so that is definitely a disruption there. We need to step back, take a look at that. We'll be doing some other things in the meantime to make more efficient use of that space. But that's a good indication of a disruption there. With the MPDES wastewater violation, that one, I can't remember off the top of my head what the disruption was there. I think we had a permit of some sort. Tyler's not. Tyler's busy. I'll look that one up here in a second. The MPDES, the sewer?
That's our temperature.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a temperature issue. And then, let's see here, our other items: aging and deteriorating water system, declining city water supply, lack of backup water power for drinking wells. Those are all tied in together. And I have that one. I think that's a resource issue as well, if I remember correctly. And as I note at the bottom, progress on these have been stalled or reprioritized in some way. So that's where our major disruptions come from. So these are the actions and strategies. These are all of the to-dos that we talk about, and this is just a blown-up version of that chart on the first page. So we have 115 on track, 67 with some disruption, 24 with major disruption, 6 that are upcoming. 12 are discontinued. So we had those 3 issues that were discontinued, but there were 12 actions and strategies that went with those items. And then completed, we have 286. And it says we've over halfway completed our plan, which is tremendous. But again, when we think about those projects and things that we took on the first year, that all of a sudden it's like, okay, we made an efficiency change here. Now it's just an operational thing. This is not going away. It's just something we do every day. It's not going to tear the balls down. We'll be just fine if we carry on in this manner. So we saw a lot of those. Another one that comes to mind when Gary's talking about the ERP, HR is looking for an electronic solution for every form that we have that's all in paper. So as one of my issues for human resources is we'd like to do some electronic personal action forms, timesheets, those kinds of things. This financial solution would take care of that for us. So we have another one that, if everything works well, we have a new system in place. That would be another low-hanging fruit, kind of easy win. So I think we'll see a few more of those, but I think we've done a lot of good work with identifying the projects and moving things into operations as we could over this last 5 years. Oh, and I have an update on the issues, so we can see how many issues we have. So in 2015, we had 29 MCAs, and we had 95 total issues, including our MCAs. In 2019, we're down to 16 MCAs, and we have 58 total issues. So then one of the next steps that Jesse will hit on here is, now that we've got some of these items completed, we want to archive them somewhere. One, we want to update those significant accomplishments that you see in the executive summary to talk about the new fire trucks and police stations and things that we've really accomplished over the last 5 years. But then you'll have a much smaller document to work with as well, so you won't have to wade through all of them. I do say this will replace any previous strategic plan report you've gotten, because it has everything in it instead of just the scaled down 11 by 17 sheets that sometimes you see. So this is a good one to hold on to for the time being. So here are just a quick overview of where we're at with Tier 1 major challenge areas. These are what the existing issues. Tier 1, the one thing the software does not do is it does not separate out external and internal issues. So we've got all our Tier 1s, external and internal, in one table, but they're identified as such. So again, that shop workspace, we talked about that. These are things that you saw with some disruption there. Deteriorating pavement conditions, mostly completed. We've done a lot of really good work on there. The action and strategy that we have that we know is on track is to annually report what that investment looks like. What progress are we making? What grants have we gotten? So that we can stay on top of it and keep it top of mind. Since we know that if we stopped doing that right now, if we didn't make those investments, it would once again be a tremendous issue that we'd have to work with. So it's still on the board there. And then we've got inadequate aging, unsafe facilities. Several of those speak to the shop, and we'll continue to work through that. Tier 2, we have, let me see here, MPDES wastewater violations is the one with the major disruption there, and that's again that temperature issue, declining city water supply, some of the things we just talked about with the disruption there. We do have, for instance, on track, that's our downtown revitalization type project. We're moving forward on that. The actions and strategies are coming right along. We're checking things off the to-do list. Of course, there's still more work to be done, but we're moving forward in a good fashion there. And then our Tier 3, some of the same things we've talked about again there. Excuse me, you'll see on the lack of a formalized urban forestry program, that is the Parks and Recreation item, one of the items that they're discontinuing some of that work because it will be updated with the Parks Master Plan. So we'll see more information on parks come forward in the future. And then Jesse, you can talk about, now that we have this plan and we're doing great things with it, what's the next iteration look like? So.
All right, hello.
Hello, Jess.
All right, so you just heard of where we came from and all the great things we've done with it. So now, how do we keep moving forward and continue to have wins and successes? For the updates, like what we've been doing, we'll continue to give you updates twice a year. Once generally during the budget process, so you can see where we're at, and then again at the start of the fiscal year is our plan. Updates will include, much like we're doing this time, just the MCAs and all the other issues. So you can kind of see what we're dealing with and how we're moving through it and the other things that we are working on. You know, as we said before, the MCAs are the top priorities, but there are also a large number of other things that we work through on the other. Continuing. Priority ratings are one of the ways that we are going to be able to track that. We've done priorities 1 through 3 in the past, which is what you just saw. Those are the ones that are classified as the major challenge areas. We're going to start using priority 4 and 5. It's included in the software, and priority 4 is on issues that may become future major challenge areas. They're the ones that we think might have enough of an impact and be pervasive enough that they might have to come before you. Priority 5 is actually just a way that we can use the software for internal projects. They may not probably ever come up to that level, and they might be more the, 1-year project or 6-month project just to get something done and better documentation interaction between departments. And then the question is new issues. How do we deal with the new things that are coming? We can't ever imagine that we identified everything we're going to ever have this first time, and once we finish these, we're done and we'll have no more issues for the city, so new things are coming up. So any new issue that's identified by staff or elected officials will be given an initial priority of 4 or 5. And part of that is so that we can then assign the priority and try to work through it as we go ahead. Once they're identified, as a 4 or 5, they do go into the normal work project. They'll be part of a budgeted process and move forward with it. The new issues will need to have at least 1 year of development before they can be presented as a major challenge area. That delay is to do a couple things. One of it is to make sure we can determine what have we been doing and fulfill kind of what's the issue and flesh it out, determine what the actions and strategies are. And the other part is, based on our past procedure, a lot of our challenge areas were projects. So if during the first year of development, we make significant progress on it, maybe it isn't actually a challenge area, and that gives us the time to really flesh that out and determine does it meet those criteria and that standard to move ahead with it. The other reason is we're hoping to have a workshop every 3 years to have the council determine new major challenge areas. 3 years is picked on purpose to make sure that we have time, once again, with our budget process. Once an area is determined, that generally can take up to a 6-month process from when budget starts to when we have budget appropriation. So by the time you identify something, present it, budget, work with it, even on a 3-year cycle, you're really only getting, 2 years of actually trying to make progress on these challenge areas, and we don't want to go back to the annual goal setting. During the workshop, council will be asked to evaluate all issues that are ranked at a 4 or 5, and here's just a similar criteria to what we used last time. What's the impact of the issue? How much does it hurt the community or any part of it? The magnitude, how big is the problem? Much like Gary said, the police department was such a large issue that we couldn't just deal with it on the 1 or 2 years at a time period. The pervasiveness, does it go to everybody? What's the threat level? Is it something we need to deal with now or can we wait? The frequency, short-term, long-term, controllable, and is it the function of the city? Is it something we can actually control, or are we better set to partner with other agencies and groups to help work through that process? And I'm sure that there will be other criteria that will come up and add to the evaluation for the matrix. And once again, during that workshop, you'll see all the issues that were either ranked 1 through 4 in priority, and you'll be able to reprioritize those back through 1 through 4, the challenge areas, MCAs, or ones that just will stay with staff for working through our issues. The next steps that we're looking forward to is in February, we'll have the next strategic planning workshop. September, we'll have updates. In December, we're hoping to launch a public dashboard. We'll increase visibility and transparency, not only to elected officials through the reporting, but also to the public, and be more often than just every 6 months.
I wanted to ask,
Yes.
I didn't have a chance to ask when Gary was up there, but it was so interesting to see, that because we've updated the website and stuff, and now we use Instagram and Twitter, do you all have information on which one gets the most play, or have you broken it out by demographic to see who's going where?
I know we look into that, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I figured we.
So Facebook is our strongest contender. We have 7,755 followers on Facebook as of this morning, actually. Twitter is at 2,500 and change. Instagram's at, I think, about 1,800. Our YouTube channel has 55 followers, but you don't have to follow to watch, so I'm not really putting a lot of faith in that one. Our website overall, we have about 583 unique visits, so different people looking at the website each day. Which was really interesting. The day after the election, we had a huge spike, which was did not repeat it the next day. But it was really neat to be able to see that. So we've gotten a lot more traction. We're reaching out to a lot more people with both our social media, our website. Both of those tools are working really well for us.
Well, the reason I just wondered too, how sometimes some organizations now are going to maybe 1 or 2 platforms? Are you waiting to evaluate to see if maybe that would be?
So my understanding is the next best one to go to is Snapchat, and I have not been able to wrap my head around how that would work well for the city. I think I like the idea of using the ones that work best for us and sticking with those. Trying to be on everything all the time, it's time consuming, and if you can't do it well across all platforms, I think it's better to just stick to a few and do it well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually a great part to then move to questions. So I'm sure that all three of us will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions?
I guess I would just ask, not being a part of the initial strategic planning process, what stands out to you as the biggest differences in how you presented that the process will be this time around versus the initial time?
I think that the biggest change is that we're going to take the time by the 1 year to really look at the new issues that are presented. And part of that, like I said, is to develop the actions, the strategies, also find out where the issues may correlate with other departments. So, for example, we've had some where multiple issues can be, limited staff in order to do something. And that's peppered throughout multiple challenge areas and issues. So maybe we should then take the time to pull that up to one issue by itself that then can impact multiple departments. So this software gives us the ability to have a bit more flexibility in how do we frame things. But the biggest change moving forward is just, the first time it was a big mad rush to get everything down, get it out, and get it moving. And now have success, we have progress, we have history on it. And now we can take the time to really work through the issues before we present them to council.
In addition to what Jesse just said, the difference between now and then was departments are all used to it now, and they weren't to start with. It took a while to get people on board and get everything working in fashion where they understood how it worked and operated. Now we've came a long ways in that in the last 3-4 years.
So is part of the thinking from now seeing what happened and making these adjustments that some of those colors, like the major disturbances or the discontinued, that perhaps the percentage that will come out that way in 3 years might be less?
Hopefully. I mean, part of it is also just determining where we're at, where we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Another significant change that we have compared to last time is the software in Visio. It really simplifies the process for creating the documentation, doing the updates, and even how do we present it. It was literally, I don't know, Jen, what do you think, about an hour to create the main report compared to days before? 3 weeks. So, yeah. So, I mean, those are some of the significant changes. It really comes down to we've learned by what we've done, and we've tried to find ways to improve the process.
Well, Jess, Jen, and Gary, thank you for the report, and we look forward to the February 2020 workshop that we're going to be setting up and doing.
Thank you.
And with that ends our regular agenda, so we'll go right into reports. I'll start with you, Jen.
I have nothing to report this time, sir.
Okay, Arthur.
Arts Commission is going to be bringing a report on the public art at Sea and Main forward to the admin committee at the next meeting.
Okay.
The Human Rights Commission meets tomorrow and PBAC on Thursday. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend transportation, but I was wondering if Bill or Tyler would give a quick update. I think the most important piece is the D Street and Main Street intersection study, which is looking at whether or not we might want to remove the parking lane on Washington, correct?
The parking on D Street?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So engineering staff did provide a report. This is in response to some of the backup during the PM peak hour we are seeing on the west leg of the D and Main intersection. A number of people have utilized A Street to C Street to Jackson to D as a route to get kind of to the northeast areas of the community from the west. We did a delay study and turning movement study and found that that leg of the intersection was operating at a service level D. Generally, D during a peak hour is not necessarily unacceptable. Usually as you get down to E, even up to E, or even as low as E, in our transportation plan as deemed to be sometimes acceptable depending upon the conditions. F certainly is a point where people may make poor decisions and may put themselves and others in unsafe situations. So currently that delay is at a service level D. We have done a concept design for what it would take to put a dedicated left turn lane in there, as well as a rough estimate of somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 to construct that turn lane. It would remove parking on both the north and the south sides of D, about approximately back to the alley to the west. That will have an impact on other businesses. The conclusion at this point in time is just to watch that current level. Since service levels are still within a range of acceptability, that we will continue to monitor that. We are concerned that with potentially the A Street project that will be constructed next year, as well as the MZ project nearby, we could see increased volumes of traffic there, so we're going to continue to watch it. If service levels get to that point of being below acceptable levels, then we will probably look at moving forward with installation of that dedicated left turn lane. We'll keep the council updated on that. There is a budgetary impact as well, so we'll take a look at that in the formation of the upcoming 2021 budget.
Thank you.
Okay. Brandy?
Planning and zoning met, did a final review of the draft ordinance for some changes to the manufactured home parks. So we should be seeing that soon. The main thing is it eliminated the 6-month limit on length of stay that was permitted in RV parks. That's what will be coming forward. They also worked on reviewing a initial draft of the sign code changes and tables that will be required in response to the Supreme Court decision where there can't be different requirements for sign based on the content of the signs. Also, Urban Renewal Agency met, working on, Bill Belknap presented to us the strategic plan update final review, and it looked very good. And also, unfortunately, a couple of the lots that were under exclusive negotiation over at Alturas has fallen through. So there's still lots for sale at Alturas.
Hey, Gina.
Okay, attended the volunteer fire department meeting. They're still working on their strategic plan, but it's been interesting to me that it is not only working on major challenge areas and issues, and Jen is smiling because it's just a turning point. It has changed into a team building, great galvanizing moment, and it is just impressive to watch. And so I am anticipating great things from them. They are changing the whole paradigm of how they govern their organization, and it is awesome. So it's coming. And they did also receive the Orchid Award for the historic preservation of Station 1's brickwork, too. So not only are they really good strategic planners, but they're really awesome with historic preservation, too. I will also attend the CETA meeting this Thursday down in Lewiston.
Catherine?
All right, fair and affordable housing, just want to make sure they do need members, so there's a couple vacancies, so I wanted to say that first. That the Palouse housing study was supposed to be discussed, but it seems the members needed more time with it, so Bill tasked them with making sure to have read more of it so that they could have a more inclusive discussion about all the information, and they're planning the 2020 Wellness Fair coming up, I think in September, I can't remember the date, I couldn't find it. February, yeah, okay, sorry, February, yeah. And then I did want to say that we made a lot of big plastic bail today. And so the plastic is still coming in, and it's been great talking with Tim and Tyler about the stopgap measure in dealing with the plastic that's still coming in. And like you said, you're diving deep to figure out what the council and what the city's going to decide to do.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. I've got a number of different things I'm going to talk about, so I'll try to make it quick. November 6th was the Orchid Awards, as you had spoke about, and there was 5 other recipients of the Orchid Awards. Very nice evening and some pretty cool stuff that was talked about throughout, so that was a good evening. November 7th, we had a legislative building codes AIC for District 5 and 6 legislators down in Lewiston. Our own Justin Goodwin did the presentation. Our 3 representatives, 2 representatives and our state senator were there, and there were 2 from Lewiston as well. Very interesting, and I didn't quite know how I liked the building code thing. I thought maybe I'd be kind of bored by it in all reality, but it actually turned out to be a pretty doggone good session with a lot of information, and Justin did a really good job on that bill. And I complimented him afterwards because there must have been about 25 of us there, I guess, and did a really good job with that. Let's see, November 11th, we had the Veterans Appreciation Dinner, and that was emceed by Jenny Ford, and that was an amazing night. And of course, we heard that during our discussion because retired Lieutenant Colonel Brad Martin had spoke to this council about being there, and we had 380 people there. It was the largest crowd ever, and it was a fabulous turnout. And Major General Eric Peterson, who was a graduate of 1986 from the University of Idaho, did the keynote speak and gave a wonderful presentation and really tied that in well with affairs going around our country and what people in their community can do as a service, whether you're on a council, whether you're a mayor, whether you're somebody working on a commission, no different than a military person. He really had a nice, good talk. So that was a wonderful evening that night. Let's see, November 12th, I had a Mayor's Youth Advisory Council meeting, and the kids decided to take on a turkey drive. They got in contact with the food bank to see what kind of needs they needed for this upcoming Thanksgiving holiday, and discovered that the food bank needs 140 turkeys, so they had the desire to go out and see what they could do at stores to generate this. And so they had an event this weekend on November 16th and 17th. They had like a turkey drive thing where they did announcements and was talking to customers to see anybody that wanted to pay for a turkey to donate it. And these kids actually, this was amazing to me. I was there most of Sunday with them. Brandon Allen was there Saturday. They collected 27 turkeys, got sold over 600 hunger bags, and these go directly to our food bank. And they got $1,116.67 in cash that will be presented to the food bank. So I was really proud of those kids for the work they did, and it was a lot of fun. And these kids are learning a lot of civic things for our community and doing volunteer stuff. These are a bunch of bright kids that have never had a practical experience of doing these things, and so I get a real charge out of being a part of that with these kids. And at Safeway, one of the fun things I did, I started doing voice calls every 15 minutes. And so I had 4 of those kids with me, and I'd take one every time I do a voice call and said, this is how you do it. And so after I did it with each one of them, I said, okay, now it's your turn. And so the first kid that got him just kind of winged it and did pretty good. Well, by the time I got to the other kids, these kids are smart. They had took their phones and typed out what they were going to say and did it beautiful. I couldn't believe it. I mean, these kids are sharp, but they were having fun with it and stuff. And it was amazing, the conversations that we had intermixing with customers. And so many people were, asking these kids, what did they do? Where are they at? What school did they go to? And this is our Musco High School here, as well as Logos. And so I was pretty proud of those kids. They really did a good job with that. It was a fun time. Let's see, I had one other thing, I think. Man, I told you I had too much stuff to talk to you guys. Oh, November 14th, the Manon Chic Awards was Kay Keshan. Was the recipient of that, and that was a fun evening. That was last Thursday night. So I had a lot of evening stuff all week last week. It was like kind of a marathon for more than any one time, but it was a fun time, and we're getting close to the holidays anyway. It was good. Gary, do you have any reports?
No reports, sir.
Well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, folks.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Yeah. Opposed? We're closed at 9:08, ladies and gentlemen.